Hello and welcome to another episode of VR Download, a weekly show where we talk about industry news and fun, exciting things, not gaming. That's later in the week on Thursday. Hi, I'm your host, Kyle. And we are here in the Upload Virtual Studios that is completely proprietary and only ours because David Heaney built it for us, and it's awesome. And you can't come in until we invite you. Let's see who else I have on the panel.
Hello,
with
everyone.
us today.
Thank you so much for joining us. Ian Hamilton here with my fingers being tracked. And of course, that's the Facebook hand tracking technology for now. I am constantly bugging Heaney to find out when we are going to get this cross-platform because there are so many people out there that refuse to put on a Facebook headset. And we want to make sure that they eventually can come into our studio. Heaney, when are we going to get that?
Sorry, I just joined in. What were you asking?
Introduce yourself first, and then we'll have Ian ask the question again.
I'm David Heaney. I write about VR technology, and I also developed this studio. And the camera is still not switching to me because despite the fact that we're all using the exact same microphone, somehow I am quieter, which makes no technical sense.
It's on you now. What I was asking Heaney was whether we're going to get this cross-platform. How are we going to get hand tracking and make sure we can get people who hate Facebook headsets into VR with us? When's that going to happen, Heaney?
Well, we will be on OpenXR very soon. As for what viable platforms there are, how many people out there have a hand tracking capable standalone headset that's not an Oculus Quest 2?
Those are fighting words.
Shade has been thrown. Oh my. Wow. Okay. So yes, the plan is to ultimately someday have everybody, have a live studio audience, and then we'll come out and chat you up before we start the show and have outtakes and all sorts of fun stuff. DVD extras, right? We need that. Okay, so this episode is it's going to be fun, and I'm going to encourage all of you to watch to the end. Because as we were coming into the studio, Ian says, we have some late breaking stuff that you didn't even get notes on that we're going to surprise everybody with at the end. And so I don't even know what it is. Or do I? I don't know. Maybe. Okay. So, gentlemen, I believe that I am ready. We have to get to a more somber note here as we talk about our first topic. Dear friends, we are gathered here today to celebrate the life and the untimely death of a true friend to the industry, PSVR. Or are we? Or are we? Ian, is PSVR dead?
It is very not dead. Oh my gosh.
It is very not dead.
No. It's funny, it's funny how we overnight switched from VR is dead to it's not dead. Just PSVR is dead. It's like someone wants something to die really desperately, and so they're just grasping onto whatever they can kill because they don't have any power since that's been taken away from them by the social media companies, maybe. Yeah. Let's throw up while we're here. Let me see if I can find the number to throw up here, just so we talk about it right now. I have to go back.
Well, while you're looking, I'm going to go and take a look in our YouTube stream here. We are live on YouTube, and those of you who are watching this live and in the chat, hi, hello, very awesome. I want to say hello to a few of our regulars. We've got Adam and Lucky Do, Onakazi, Pixel, Wolferaza, Chris, Jeff, hi, all of you, Matthew, howdy do. Man, it's wonderful to see all the same regular names over and over again in here, and I highly recommend that you speak your mind. We love to have this be an interactive, conversational type of thing. So back to Ian. Ian has some numbers up here. Let's take a look.
All right, so Steam just updated its hardware survey today. I think those numbers have been changing in the few days right after the hardware release, so it's possible these numbers could shift a little bit. But we see Oculus Quest 2 at the top of the Steam hardware survey, just about almost to 1/3 of Steam VR usage being from that single headset that released at the end of 2020. Then, of course, the overall VR number is over 2% this month. That number shifts right below and right above 2% of all Steam VR users having VR headsets. Then you've got Oculus Rift S, a dead headset. Then you've got Valve Index, which is still on sale. HTC Vive, a dead headset that's no longer being sold. Oculus Rift, a 2006, both those being 2006 era 2016 era headsets. Then you've got Windows Mixed Reality, which was 2017, and then Oculus Quest, being the previous generation no longer sold of the Quest, totaling quite a large number of headsets coming from Facebook alone that are in use on Steam. The way I think of it is Sony, Valve, and Facebook were all winners of the first generation of VR in very different ways, in my opinion. What we're seeing with Quest 2 is the start of the second generation. You've got Quest 1 and 2 out there on its own with an open field, and no one else is out there competing with them, at least not in the West yet, with this second generation of VR just yet. Yes, you've got these next generation, like really good PC VR headsets in the Reverb 2, as far as visuals at least, not so much the controllers. And then you've got the Index, which has all around great features over on the PC VR side of things. But there's no one else who has taken the step of doing a standalone VR headset yet for Western markets, and that's causing a lot of problems. You go back several years, people were expecting a Rift 2 to come out. You've obviously got the HTC Vive Pro 2 here on this chart that I've thrown up here from Steam, but there was no dramatically different thing for PCVR that really took PCVR forward in a really substantial way. You've got a sharpening of everything that was done in the first generation of VR for PCs, and that just never materialized for PCVR. And people are still trying to guess, what's the next generation? Well, in my opinion, we've already got it. Like Quest 2 and Quest have done what VR needs to do and become a standalone platform. And I've got an editorial going up this week from a guest writer talking about whether PCVR is dead, and he's got his own opinions and sort of his take on it. But my particular take on this is what Quest and Quest 2 have done is completely shifted the narrative from being VR as an accessory to another device to a PC and a phone being an accessory to VR. And I think when you talk about is PC VR dead, that is such an oversimplified, I want to fight on Twitter take that people are coming up with, that I think it just totally misses the overall evolution here. That Steam is got to be very, very happy. Valve has got to be very, very happy with Facebook more or less backing out of PC VR. Steam and Valve won Generation 1 of PC VR, in my opinion. They did exactly what they set out to do, and set a roadblock for Facebook there that they could not pass. And Steam is still the de facto store that you want to use for all of your PC VR content. And that's exactly what I think Valve set out to do when it started out with its partnership with HTC. And I can't view that as anything but HTC winning that particular race. And then you've got PlayStation, which we'll get to in a minute, talking about where that race is going. But they were out there with 5 million PlayStation VR headsets very early, announcing that figure. And now we've got sort of Facebook here with its standalone headset, changing the market in a considerable way.
There are a million different directions that we can take this conversation. There's so many different ways that we can have this back and forth. And I try to, when I do my own personal research on what the feeling from the community is on whether or not something is alive or dead or popular or boring or stupid or whatever, everybody's got an opinion. But I think we need to drill it down to a very, very primal definition of what exactly, and it might seem stupid to everyone, but just follow me. what is PCVR? What defines PCVR? Is it a headset like you alluded to, Ian, that it's an accessory to a PC, VR hard plugged into a computer? But I wonder, do you consider PCVR to also be I'm streaming from my high-end gaming rig wirelessly over Link or virtual desktop? Hi, Guy. Is that also PCVR in your guys' opinion? I'm just curious.
Yeah, for sure, it definitely is, and I think that is what's happening right now. PC VR isn't dead. We're just going through a transition period from these headsets that plug into DisplayPort and are kind of dumb devices that only directly display what your PC is showing, to standalone headsets that have PC as a mode. And I think potentially in the near term, wireless headsets that use that same kind of technique, streaming a compressed stream from your PC to the headset, even if it isn't a full-on standalone. You know, in the Oculus Quest and HTC Vive Focus 3, we see the Qualcomm XR2 used, which is a, full-fledged chip capable of delivering VR experiences. But Qualcomm has cheaper chips available, such as the XR1, that could be used for just directly streaming a PC. So I think we could see PC headsets that can deliver wireless without even having to be standalone. What is dead is this idea that you're going to spend a lot of money on a headset that plugs into a wire from your computer that is spec wise outperformed in 6 months by the next standalone headset. I think that model is dead. But if you look at the growth of games on Steam, we're still seeing successful VR games launched on Steam, and we're still seeing devs that have games that have been shipped for years expand their user base and keep delivering these rich immersive experiences that simply can't come to standalone anytime soon.
So and thank you, Heaney, because that's exactly what I was hoping somebody would say. Here's my opinion. I have had an unfortunate incident happen to my car recently, and something needed to be repaired. And I thought to myself, imagine if I took this car and said, well, because it's broken right here on this spot, well, that car's dead. That's it. Throw it away. Don't bother with anything else. Just it's dead because it's got one thing wrong with it. I would like to propose that everybody who is saying that PC VR is dead is actually looking at the wrong thing. The cable, the VR cable is dead. That right there, I think, is something that most people can agree with. Most, not all. There will still be outliers. But Ian, do you think that that's a better way of putting it, that the cable is dead?
It's an interesting way of putting it. I think you've got something there where it's really unfortunate that PCVR has so few hardware solutions to great wireless PCVR. So we've got Guy in our comments here, Guy Godin, the creator of Virtual Desktop. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you have questions about Virtual Desktop, maybe put them to him, since that's such a fundamental piece of software for so many people out there to get a great experience wirelessly via software from your PC to your wireless headset in a really fundamental, high quality way. But you're still doing this thing that's fundamentally compressing data between the two devices. And there's plenty of people out there that want the uncompressed, best possible experience that's imaginable, and you're still getting some compression out of the hardware solutions out there. So we don't have like an uncompressed wireless solution at all. Is that right, Heaney?
Yeah,
Are
even
we
the
ever going to
HTC
have
one,
that?
even the HTC ones use a minor amount of compression. But the question I think that's better is, do we really need it? I'd like to see,
Hmm.
when Link first came out, it was running at maybe 100 megabits. They soon let you pitch that all the way up to 500 megabits, although that caused some sort of stuttering, and sometimes there would be kind of trade-offs there. But I think we're going to get to the point where, especially with eye tracking and foveated rendering, people won't be able to notice. And I'd like to see in a few years' time wherever compression streaming goes today, I'd like to see someone who has that view sit down in a headset and do a real A/B test and see if they can actually tell the difference. Because I am a compression snob myself. I'm the type of person who likes to have the highest bit rate movies and things like that. But even I have to say, when you put the current streaming up to 400, 500 megabits per second, it's extremely difficult to notice a difference. And one of the things that sort of does cloud people's experiences right now is that what graphics card generation you have will depend on the quality there, because the encoder gets better and better each generation. And specifically, the AMD cards are still quite a bit behind on image quality for the encoder. But these are all kind of teething issues. I think as we move forward into this new era of VR, where streaming is the norm, they're going to get solved. And over time, the compression is going to get less and less noticeable until no one misses having a really thick, heavy display port cable coming out of their head and going to the corner. And I get that there's some people who say, oh, I don't really mind the cable, but I would argue anyone who doesn't mind the cable has already bought into VR, and VR is not going to expand further with the cable.
Are you using your external microphone right now?
I am not. I am using the Quest 2's built in. Is it not working?
Okay. Oh, no, you suddenly sounded really close to a microphone out of nowhere. It's like you're right in my ear, and it was kind of jarring to suddenly have Heaney kind of whispering right in my ear.
It's the positional audio. It has a cone to it. As I turn around, it has an actual cone to it. So if I'm looking away from you and talking, it sounds different than if I'm looking at you and talking, just like in real life.
Man, science is awesome, isn't it? I'm going to date myself here, old enough to remember having a tethered telephone on the wall in the kitchen, and it would ring, and I wouldn't know who it was calling, and I would answer the phone, hello, and I was tethered to the wall in the kitchen. And then suddenly these wonderful cordless phones came out, and they were wonderful because they were wireless, but the quality and the distance, it really was kind of garbage. And then over time, it got better and it got better and it got better. And I think that's kind of what Heaney is saying. And I love that. I love that you said it's teething. We're just kind of getting through this. We have to grind through some of this stuff and get to a point where things are established. In my research for this topic, to make sure I was up on everything that was going on, I came across a video by an influencer named Thrill Seeker, who did a very succinct job of capturing this whole conversation. And he essentially got to a point where he started talking about cloud computing and the idea of having some PC out in cyberspace or the metaverse where you connect to that computer does all the hard work and streams it to you. Now, 5 years ago, and Ian, I know you're shaking your head. I get it. 5 years ago, I would have laughed at that concept. Now, having done it myself, I have actually experienced this where I connected to a cloud computer that streamed to me. We're just right on the cusp where that's going to be okay. Internet connections are getting faster, computer processing and bandwidth and all the stuff that Heaney talked about, it's all getting there. It's just not there yet. So we have to be patient and let that happen, because just like my cordless phone that really kind of didn't do the job when it first came out, nowadays I could be out in the middle of the woods and get a phone call and take it in the crystal clear connection. So I don't know what your response to that is, Ian.
I'm shaking my head at you a little bit here, because you're talking about an evolution that took place over really 40 years, going from like cordless in the house phones to being able to have cellular phones that cost an extraordinary amount of money and were bulky, giant things, car phones, to having really in your pocket ones, and then smartening up the software on them so you actually want them. That only really happened in the last 15 years. So it's like there's a very long evolution. So yeah, sure, we'll get there. But it did take 30 to 40 years for us to get, and I'm not saying it's going to take necessarily 30 to 40 years for us to get cloud VR, but it's going to be over a very long span of time for us to get wireless networks that get anywhere close to the capability of that. And in the meantime, I want to go back to Matt Foreman's comment here, quote saying, PCVR will never be dead because it is the best version of VR. It will always have interest from VR enthusiasts and be used for cases when processing power is needed. And I think that's absolutely what I'm saying and what I was getting at earlier in this conversation, talking about this change from VR being an accessory for your PC to now VR to a PC being an accessory for your VR experience. It's flipping this situation where if you really love what you find in the Quest, you can go and up level that experience by getting Alex, Boneworks, and a H3VR and a bunch of other Steam early access titles that are going to be coming to Quest later when they get, or never coming to Quest in the case of something like H3VR, or in the case of Boneworks, being a completely different experience that they're going to make for Quest versus the true physics-heavy Boneworks experience. Like you're going to get you may get some version of that on a Quest eventually, but it won't be the exact same Boneworks experience that people have been losing their minds over the last couple of years on PC VR. So it's and the simulators, flight simulator, and talking about that, serious car simulators. You're not going to get those out of Quest. You're going to get some things like Warplanes just came out, and that's going to be an incredible plane simulator, but it's not the same experience necessarily as Flight Simulator. And you're still, if you love what you find on Quest, you're going to go get a PC as an upgrade from that experience. And I think any discussions talking about PC VR being dead in the face of that reality, that it is an awesome, awesome accessory to go get a PC and upgrade and get those amazing Steam experiences for your Quest, is just reducing this you're reducing this conversation just for clicks and a really bad take if you're saying anything else about PCVR at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Alex really is a key point to make there, and so is the content, because we're talking a lot about the hardware, and obviously this is the show that we do talk about the hardware. But the biggest increase in the Steam number of percentage of users that have a VR headset, the number that I care about a lot more than the relative number of which percent are Rift S and which percent are Index, it went from 1.29% to 1.91% the month Half-Life Alex was released. So I think that in the first kind of era of PC VR, we saw these big games from Facebook like Lone Echo, and we saw Alex from Valve. And the problem is, those were not developed in a way that any other developer could do. No other developer could risk games with those sort of budgets to the size of the PC market. So you get this experience now where Valve hasn't, announced any new game, and Facebook is backing off funding PC games, and they're moving on to Quest games, where you are going to see this kind of slump. But that's not because VCVR is dying. That's just because it was artificially inflated in the first place by these content. So as the number of Steam users with a VR headset grows and the market can naturally build up, we will eventually get to in a few years to the point where those sort of games can come from other publishers, and even from developers that today are building some VR games on Quest. I think will eventually come back and ship something on PC. And the other factor, we'll talk about this later, but PlayStation VR 2 is going to have a major impact on PC, because if you do have all of those PSVR 2 users that you can sell to, and a PC can also run this content, which it can, why wouldn't they ship across those two platforms? So I think we're going to see a category of VR game and content in general that's available on PlayStation VR 2 and on Steam VR, but doesn't come to Quest. But it's just that, this is still a very early industry. And even though to some people it seems like this has been going for a while, we are still in the very, very early days of both VR content and VR hardware. So PC VR isn't dead. It's just taking a long time to kind of get into its stride.
Yeah, I mean, there's a plateauing that occurs on technology where the growth is starting to become incremental, and we're really not there yet. There's still a lot of big steps that need to be taken. Heaney, you're always the numbers guy. I'm wondering if there is a Venn diagram that somebody has put together of the crossover of folks that have a really powerful PC and people who purchased VR. and the overlap, I would imagine that go ahead. Do you have a
Heaney, talk about your 4K insight. I love your 4K insight that you saw on the Steam VR numbers.
Well, first, I was just going to kind of touch on Cal's point there, because I think that is actually a really, really good point. That so much of Steam, if you look on the hardware survey, is actually people with low-end graphics cards and laptops, because Steam isn't just people playing the biggest AAA games that you see on console. There's all of these kind of games that can run on anyone's laptop that are quite popular. So I think that would be really interesting to see. 2% of all of Steam's users have a VR headset, but how many that have a really good GPU have a VR headset? I think that number would be higher than people would expect. But just to come back to your point, yes, we're at the point where we are maybe 6 months of good growth away from the number of people with a VR headset on Steam exceeding the number of people with a 4K primary monitor on Steam. So if we get to that point, people always kind of think in the PC gaming space, oh, having a 4K monitor is normal. And, in all of the gaming press, the review graphics cards, it's talked about like it's a very common thing. Well, is PC VR dead when more people will soon have a PC VR headset than a 4K monitor? That's kind of a narrative violation I don't think people have really factored in when you really look at these numbers.
So I want to take issue with Chris Richardson's comment here, talking about us maybe clickbaiting you into this discussion, asking the question, is PC VR dead? And I take this big issue with it because we asked 2 questions in our title for this stream. We asked about PC VR dead, and the next topic that I really want to get into now, because I think it folds into this really well. There's a joke on the internet that if you see a question headline, the answer to it is usually no. And in this case, I will admit, the answer that I've come away with to is PC VR dead? Yes, the answer is no. No, it is not dead. But the second question that I want to get into with Kyle is going to be the opposite answer. And that's my defense against this being a clickbait YouTube discussion, because we're dealing with both here. We've got both a yes answer and a no answer to these questions, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, and here's how we're going to start this conversation off. Regular watchers and listeners of this show know that I've talked about my daughters who have, they each have a Quest 1, an OG Quest that they play VR in together. Separately, they do their own thing. One's older, so she's playing Echo a lot, and the other one's doing more rec room, paintball type of stuff. But all of a sudden, last week, I come down into our living room where our game consoles are connected to a television, and I noticed that my 16-year-old daughter is playing Beat Saber on the PSVR. And I couldn't help but wonder. I waited until she was done. She played for about an hour. She comes out. I said, why are you playing this on the PSVR versus playing this in your Quest? You have the game on both. Why did you choose to do that? And she said, and I quote, I don't know. Sometimes it feels a little bit more fun in the PSVR. I said, why? And she's like, I don't know. Maybe it was the controllers. Maybe it's the comfort of the headset. I don't know. And I said, so you really don't know, but you were compelled to go and do this on the PSVR. I mean, we have plenty of VR games on our PS4 that she could play at any time. She chose to do Beat Saber on it. It got me thinking, what actually did provoke her to go and use that? And man, I still don't really know. She doesn't really know. But the PSVR has a foothold in our home. Essentially, I don't know if other people do as well, have that same experience, but now we're finding out things about the Quest that it outsold the PSVR. Now, Ian, there's obviously data. There's data that you can give us to continue this conversation, but I wanted to give that anecdote first, so that way people knew that the PSVR is still an active item in some people's homes. So go ahead, Ian, take it away.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to mention one more. We've got Guy's comment here. I just want to, as a closure on the last discussion, Guy saying wired PC VR headsets are going to slowly disappear, in my opinion. Of course, that coming from the mouth of the creator of the most popular wireless VR piece of software. So take that for what you will, but I kind of see that being a very probable insight. All right, so what we've got here is in Facebook's recall, volunteer recall of the facial interface of the Quest 2, the documentation from the Consumer Product Safety Board, I think,
Commission.
mentions 4 million facial interfaces being recalled. And you can take that. We were very careful with this, not to kind of assume that meant 4 million quests had been sold. But several other outlets immediately saw that 4 million number and kind of took that as confirmation that the Quest 2 specifically has cleared 4 million headsets. It's a pretty safe assumption, but it's still a pretty big assumption. You don't know how many facial interfaces were sold as part of the Fit Pack, how many of them were sold or made as replacements, and actually uh, people took up those replacements or bought a second interface as a backup for their current one. Um, it's probably not in the millions, is more or less the assumption out there. It's probably very much smaller than that. So you can take that 4 million, which only represents the United States, and then I think there was another couple 100,000 or 170,000 for Canada that could be rolled into that 4 million. So it was like 4.17 million Quest 2 interfaces were being recalled for these two North American countries. You can also go and look at the breakdown of revenue by region in the other category at Facebook. So Facebook breaks down its revenue as advertising, and then there's the other category, and other category includes Portal and the Quest. And if you look at the region breakdown, you can start to make a guess that perhaps there were a million or two other headsets, other Quest 2 headsets sold in other regions in addition to the United States, if the proportions of revenue sort of carry over that way. So yeah, Heaney's got the chart here showing the various regions for other revenue from Facebook. And you've got Q2 2021 here where it's kind of going down. You can see how gigantic the revenue is in Q4 when you have the holiday season. You've got obviously from Thanksgiving to Christmas, you've got just nonstop advertising and sales to try to sell, and get people to put various pieces of electronics underneath the Christmas tree for their families. And you go back to Q4 of 2019, and you can see a boost up there then when it was only the Quest 1 on the market. I think that's right. So Quest 1 wasn't gigantic, but then Quest 2 hits here in Christmas of 2020, and it's just a massive amount of things being sold in that region. And then you've got the USA and Canada being this giant bar here of $584 million for that 3-month period. And then you've got the other regions there. And so the other regions are pretty small. And you can assume, so if like these three bars here, these three blue bars equate to around 4 million quests when you consider all the interfaces, how many does the Asia Pacific and Europe, how many of those quests are in the rest of those bars? And so you can basically, if you want to just take napkin math and start guessing at it, we know that from about to January 2020, there were 5 million PSVR headsets sold. Sony came out and said, we've cleared 5 million out there in the market. We've got this recall number out of Facebook now saying 4 million for the United States alone. I think we are pretty safe in saying that Quest 2 has probably outsold PSVR and done it in a much shorter amount of time.
Yeah, so I think the key here is how do we kind of extrapolate the rest of the world? And Guy Godin, who's in our comments, I noticed on Twitter, said that 50% of his users were from the United States. And if we kind of look at the percentages of the ratio of Facebook's other revenue sales, to be clear, this includes their Oculus, their portal video calling device, and some miscellaneous payments from within their app shopping experiences, just the profits off that. So this doesn't directly map to Oculus, and we can't just divide here. What we can do is get an upper limit by looking at these 3 quarters and kind of dividing that by the price of the Quest. And if we do that, we get to an upper limit of around 8 million. So we're probably somewhere in the region around 6 million Quest 2s, maybe just below 6 million. And then you have to remember, we have to also add that on to the user base of Quest 1s, which is we can roughly estimate to be around 1 to 2 million. So we can safely say that if PlayStation VR was at 5 million 17 months ago, the combination of Quest 2 and Quest 1 is either very, very close or past it. I think we can fairly safely say that it's past it. An interesting data point here is that after Quest 2 was on the market for 3 months, the developers of Rec Room, with their analytics, estimated that 2 to 3 million Quest 2s had been shipped worldwide in the first 3 months. So we're now at the 9-month point, and you can see how it's very easy to believe that we have got to 5, 6 million, maybe even as high as 7 million. But that's kind of, I think that's probably beyond where we are now. So it's interesting to think about the fact that Quest 2 has done that in just over 9 months, whereas PlayStation VR has been on the market since late 2016.
Upgrades. I want to talk about upgrades for just a moment, because when you look at this chart, it's a little concerning to me. The number of if this is meant to represent, and obviously everybody's talking about Portal. It's like what is the Portal? I mean, really, honestly, how many people actually know what it is and are using it and are buying it? I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know anybody, and I know somebody in the comments, hi Dell, said the same thing. I don't know anybody that has a Portal, so I don't know. Ian, do you have one?
I got really close to it for video chats this year. I have not yet done it,
Right.
but I was really close to do some of those long distance family video chats. It seems like a solid device for it, but I still have my concerns.
When you see this downward kind of dip of what can only be described as data encompassing the VR from Facebook, you see this dip, and I'm wondering, because I know a lot of people who had a PS4, and as soon as the PS5 came out, they immediately jumped out and bought the PS5, not because their PS4 was broken, but just because they had to upgrade. They had to. It was essential that they had the latest and greatest. While the Oculus Quests may have outsold PSVR, based on the numbers that we have. So the answer to that question, Ian, is yes. Yes, we have legitimate data that indicates that question is yes. Are we going to see people who, well, here comes the Quest 3, here comes the Quest 4. I'm going to drop the other one and pick up the latest and greatest just because I have to have the latest and greatest. We know that there are a lot of Sony people who buy Sony PlayStations, and they have to have the latest and greatest. Are we at a point yet, and I ask the audience as well, are we at a point yet where people have to have the latest and greatest VR headset, or are they content with having a headset right now and they don't need to upgrade yet to the latest and greatest? Has that crossed your mind at all?
I thought you were gonna go in a different direction with that, because I was confused about, like, there's a certain percentage of people that just stop using their VR headsets, and those are wildly varying, I would bet, between various platforms. I think so. Let me switch this around, and you, Kyle, I'll go back. Do you think more people stop using their PSVR headsets each month, adjusted for per capita, how many are out there? do you think the larger percentage of people stop using their PSVR headsets or stop using their Quest 2s each month?
Wow, that is a heck of a question. I mean, I wouldn't even pretend to be able to answer that. I have no speculation whatsoever. Heaney, what do you think? Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I think the attach rate for standalone headsets, we already know from Facebook, was higher than even the Rift S. We know that even as the Quest 1. So I think when it's a standalone headset that you can just kind of pick up off the table after being charged, that's a lot more appealing for people to jump in regularly versus a PlayStation VR where the cabling setup for that thing is really, really intense. You think of all the different cables that has to go in there. You think of the fact that you're still having to kind of do it through a PlayStation 4. You think of the fact that it's only in one space. So when you have a Quest, you can pick whatever space in your house is free. When you have PlayStation VR, it's only directly beside your PlayStation. I think it's obviously we don't have hard data, but I think it's pretty safe to say that the attach rate for Quest is going to be the continuous attach rate for Quest is going to be higher than something like a PlayStation VR,
Uh,
which is then again going to be higher than a PC. Obviously, the content there is kind of a different thing where you can say maybe there are games that people want to come back to more. But at the end of the day, that physical hardware friction is the big factor that has to be overcome. And it's likely why we've seen Sony shift to a single cable for the PlayStation VR 2, just one USB-C cable into the thing, and that's it.
I'm wondering about the charge of the battery being an issue there. I'm gonna say the jury is still out there, Heaney, where I don't know how many times I've picked up my Quest and found out it had a dead battery when I picked it up. And that being a pretty frustrating thing where I just, put the headset back down and said, I'm not going to go into VR right now, where that would not be the same situation with a PSVR headset.
Well,
Uh,
if you're
so
forgetting to charge it, then obviously it's not going to work. But I don't think plenty of people that would really want to use this would just completely forget to charge it afterwards. I feel like it
So,
would be
so let me
very.
propose this, and this is absurd. I'm telling you before I say it, this is absurd. But what if a mainstream media outlet put out an article that said PSVR is dead because of the number of people who aren't returning to it, and it's the retention level is going lower and lower. So PSVR is dead. What would the response from the community be if that type of article were to come out?
Oh yeah, they'd stop reading that outlet immediately. Lots of people would, in my opinion. Although it would probably get to a lot of traction on Twitter. It would probably get a lot of people discussing stuff. But I mean, I'll be honest. I've blocked a few outlets out there that I've been pretty annoyed by their constant uh, harping on the VR industry because it just makes for such good headlines. I'm not even going to mention them here, but there's some outlets out there that just every 3 months come up with a new way to suggest that VR is dead in various ways, and they're just so they're missing so much of what we are trying to illuminate in this discussion of the intricacies of these numbers, attaching friction, attach rates, friction, all these things that really have to be more complex than they get to in these articles.
Yeah, I think anyone that's kind of saying PSVR is dead would have to have pretty much no knowledge of the industry at all because PlayStation VR is at the very, very end of its product cycle. It launched in late 2016. It's using hardware that is almost a decade old now. In some cases, including the controllers, it literally is a decade old. So, Sony has talked about their new hardware. It has a brand new console to kind of launch this new VR platform on. And in general, people looking at the VR market and saying, "Oh, there's only Facebook for now." It's room for optimism as well. Sony is coming next year. They've announced that they are launching a VR platform, and if
Well, next year
all
they
of
said after 2021.
after
To be clear,
2021, did they not say? Did they not say holiday 2022? Did I dream that?
I think that's
I,
assuming. I think
yeah,
they just
but I
said
mean,
after 20. They said not this year, just like Facebook said Quest Pro is not this year.
right.
Right. Well,
I think.
okay. I think that the point is whether it's holiday 2022 or just after that. I think given Sony's product releases, it's going to be holiday 22. It would be very strange for them to pick another time. But the real point here is that Sony has always backed up these kind of launches with content, and it's kind of talked about how PlayStation VR 1 was this experiment. obviously, with PlayStation VR 2 announced, that was a successful experiment that they were going to build on. So I think once we see PlayStation VR 2 launch, the idea of calling VR dead will be obviously silly, but also the idea of calling PlayStation VR dead, because again, it's one of those things where we are so early in this industry. PlayStation VR was an experiment for Sony, hobbled together with old basic hardware, and PlayStation VR 2 is going to be where we really see them hit hard and deliver what they can deliver as one of the world's premium gaming companies.
I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on the fact that I believe Sony put just as much thought into VR as Oculus did prior to Facebook buying them. For those of you who have been around long enough to remember Project Morpheus, which was the name of PSVR prior to its actual public release, there were so many iterations and so many really smart people at Sony working on that hardware. They really put a lot of thought into making that a truly amazing. When it came out, I was really impressed with it. And I had been using different iterations of the Morpheus headset throughout its development. I really think that Sony is solidly in. To say that it's an experiment, it was, but it was a very methodical and very well thought out experiment that I think was a huge success. What do we have here? Oh, these are the new controllers for
this is the only hardware that Sony has officially shown for its next generation PSVR. And of course, they've notably not called it PSVR 2 yet in any of their documentation. So everyone you see calling it PSVR 2, they're just inserting their own name in there, and it'll probably be called that, but they still have refused to actually call it that. I think they've actually confirmed these have the resistive triggers, or at least some of the technology from their DualSense controllers, which are the new ones on the PlayStation 5. We've obviously got an article out there. We were the exclusive first place to report some of the specs of this new headset. We expect it to be inside out, tracked headset, to have some gaze tracking in there, which is a very, very big feature that when you combine it with these great controllers, what look like really great controllers, we obviously can't make that for sure until we hold it, but I really like the way these look, gripping in the hand. And then if they've got that DualSense resistive triggers, and then you've got foveated rendering, or at least some really good eye tracking in there, you can really improve throwing mechanics in VR in a really substantial way. And it's really interesting to think about the prospect of this, or even a Xbox VR headset coming in the next year and a half, when you've got those experiences on console VR. If you're actually able to get some of those experiences on console VR, Boneworks and Alex, if you can get those things, Flight Simulator, if you can get those things on console VR, you are accessing a larger market than what we're seeing out of the first generation of console VR.
Paradise Decay says in the chat, can I just say Xbox VR is dead? Can you kill what was truly never alive?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just to clarify, I checked the report for holiday 2022. That was from Bloomberg. So it's not confirmed from Sony that this will launch in holiday 22, but Bloomberg, which is highly reliable at reporting tech launches like this and has been accurate in the past for VR, including predicting the Oculus Quest 2 specs, has reported it. So it seems like close to a sure thing.
So I think it's a different thing of saying Sony may be targeting that versus like them actually confirming that they've done it. We're still in this chip shortage situation, and I think the biggest sort of confirmation for me on this is, like, people were so surprised that Nintendo went and announced this new Switch, that the only thing that's different is an OLED screen, where there was a pretty substantial report, a reliable report earlier in the year, that it was going to have a lot of new things, as I recall, in it. But I think that there's such good evidence to kind of suggest that the chip shortage couldn't dramatically alter roadmaps for a lot of these companies, and maybe Sony is targeting end of 2022, and it seems pretty obvious. But when you're talking that kind of time frame with global supply chains changing the way they are, anything can happen.
Man, oh man, I this is actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say, Ian, that the whole clickbait article title thing, is it dead? Has it outsold? Yes, no. We really truly don't have a way to answer these questions in a binary way like that, yes or no. We don't know. Is it dead? We don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. Has it outsold? Probably, based on the data that we have. But we're asking the questions because we want you to consider it. Think about it. We want you to, and is that how clickbait articles work? Is they're really trying to get you to come to your own conclusion? Or are they trying to convince? I mean, I don't know, Ian.
I don't think so.
am I playing right into it?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's not everyone. There's not all guesses are created equal. There are ones that are built on real data and a really firm understanding of the way the market works at any given moment, and then there are ones which are not. And there are plenty of outlets out there that just misunderstand the friction points and use friction that was there in 2018 to judge the state of the market in 2021. Headsets are still face bricks. They are face bricks. These things suck because they're so darn heavy. And I cannot blame a single person out there that wants to take these things off 5 minutes after they put them on because they're so dang heavy. And so if you're out there saying that the weight problems of VR have been solved, you're an idiot. They have not been solved. We have 5 years to go, 10 years to go before they actually solve that problem. Are they better than they were last year? Absolutely. And we're going to keep moving in that direction. But that's still a massive, massive friction point that's not gone away anytime soon. And it's still going to be there year after year until we get those glasses form factors, those holographic headsets that we've seen being prototyped and in some of these research facilities. Holy moly, I got fired up on that one. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the problem and where we get a lot of these kind of VR is dead articles is a lot of people say, oh, these are artificially constructed to try and get hate clicks, and maybe some of them are, but I don't think all of them are. I think a lot of them really just are that misinformed, because a lot of the tech media that exists today kind of grew up and expanded quickly in the 2010s. It isn't, these aren't outlets that have been around for a significant amount of time, or if they are, they were kind of the people who are currently writing from this today aren't kind of institutionally attached to those outlets from a while ago. And so a lot of them most of their traffic has come from just analyzing the smartphone and tablet market and the gadgets that are accessories around that. And so when those technologies are really the result of decades of progress in portable small computers and in kind of mobile chip technology and in cell phones in general. So I think a lot of these people look at new emerging technologies that genuinely are new and just they don't have a mental model for them. They don't have a mental model for something that doesn't instantaneously sell tens of millions of units and expand very quickly. They aren't used to an entirely new technology appearing. And they're the same kind of people that in 1992 would have said, oh, computers are stupid. They're these big, bulky things and there's nothing you can do on the internet. And why would I ever need a computer anyway? So it's not that they're intentionally trying to get clicks, in my opinion. I think really just don't have the knowledge of how real new technologies grow.
And that's fine. And when we do our best to try to stay, in the realm of data and in the realm of, some speculation and obviously opinion. Okay. We're not without opinion. Other outlets can do what other outlets do. If you just come here and get your stuff from us, and that's how you mitigate that problem. I do want to point out somebody in the chat, Robert Quinones. he says, I bet you one day we'll be using emulators in VR that will play old console games, but in VR. Now, I remember way back in DK1 days with no positional tracking, being in Rift Max Theater, okay, old school stuff. Hi, Mike. Having a conversation about the what was that? The house in Italy. I always forget what it was called. It was one of the original
Tuscany experience.
Tuscany. Thank you. I couldn't remember the city. I remember somebody saying to me, someday with the screen door effect and the 3 degrees of freedom that we have now, someday somebody in a really advanced headset is going to want to emulate this experience in a high-end VR headset. And I laughed because I knew that person was correct when they said that. Obviously, emulators, people are playing Game Boy games, old OG green and brown, no backlight Game Boy games on emulators on PCs that could do amazing things, and that's what they want to play. I do agree with you, Robert. I think that is a real thing that will happen. Sorry, little side note there, but I love comments like that. Go ahead.
I'm gonna throw it out there that I love that we're getting into this. That I've looked into this just a little bit, and I've asked. I want to understand, like, emulating hardware is a really fascinating, really fascinating thing. And I thank you so much to our members out there, people who contribute to us. I haven't pursued this as an article yet. I really want to get into it at some point. But we've got to kind of justify the time investment into researching it. And people who, if you're interested in like knowing more about this, subscribe, give us money, let us know that you really want to know this. But like, imagine having like an old game system in VR and having a memory card, like let's say a PS1 or PS2, where you had the physical memory cards. Are you going to be able to say simulate all the parts of emulation here? Where, like, do you remember the old Game Sharks? Those types of things.
Yes.
Where you can. I want to know if we're ever going to see emulation of the interaction of various hardware platforms, where like I could be in VR chat with somebody else and they could hand me their memory card and I could hand them mine and we could trade a memory card here. And I take that memory card and insert it into an old PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2. And the emulated PlayStation 1, the simulated one, actually reacts to that hardware exactly as it should. And if I insert a Game Shark into one of those game systems, I'll be curious if it actually does. And I know that there is actual research out there to try and investigate and get this to work in a simulated way in VR.
Well, that's cool, because then I would be able to try to put homebrew software on my Nintendo Wii and brick it, just like I do in real life. That's beautiful. I love that. With the MUVR, somebody threw, I guess, Heaney, you threw that video up there. Emulation in VR, I love that concept, Ian. I would love the idea of, here, let me toss you my Game Genie that you can throw into your virtual version of that hardware. I love that. I think that's a great idea. And, I'll play some Donkey Kong Country in VR. Heck yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait. That's gonna be amazing. There's so much interest in this, and obviously those game systems are getting harder and harder to get. They're becoming more and more antique and high-priced items. But I can't wait to see. There's something really magical, I think, being done with some of the emulation stuff out there. The research into true VR simulation of hardware at a hardware level, and the interactions between all those things. We're going to need to get into that at some point.
This proves a point too about how dedicated a fan base is to a specific hardware console or device. I mean, there are people who are just so high on Dreambox any of the other GameCube. There are some really diehard fans. I mean, you could really make a lot of people angry by saying any number of these decades old devices is dead. And they're like, no, it's not. Look at this huge forum that we have. And it would be wrong to say that any of these things are dead, because the fan base is so dedicated. They love the idea. And this might be a way to capture that in VR, to have those people come over and say, now I can have all of these amazing consoles whenever I want. That's, I think, pretty substantial. Not our topic, but yes, definitely a good point. Ian, you showed me something.
Yeah.
Just before we went on live today, and I cannot wait for the audience. This is the thing I said you have to wait till the end for. This is the teaser. Let's see what this looks like, and I can't wait to hear everybody's opinion on this.
All right, so let me get into this. Let me show you. Let me start with this, which is where I will show you me being at SIGGRAPH in 2017. All right, so SIGGRAPH, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's the computer graphics conference, and all the major companies like NVIDIA and Microsoft and Google and Facebook typically show off their the research that they've partnered with various universities to investigate. And this was some of the research I saw on a DK2 back in 2017. And the idea was to more or less remove the headset from your head and insert a digitally rendered version of your face onto where the headset is on your face. And it was a way of, the other thing I want to mention here is I saw some research out of Facebook recently where they did an A/B test. And I believe they showed a store page for a game with both a mixed reality video and a traditionally captured video. And they were suggesting in the A/B test that the store page that showed a mixed reality version of the game sold more copies than the traditional trailer version of the game. And so what you've got there is some of the first actual evidence that mixed reality and removing, at least syncing up two realities for players actually shows them enough of what they're going to be doing in the virtual space to convince them to buy at a faster rate than just flat screen footage. All right, so Heaney and I were discussing this before we came in here. And what we've got here is, let me get you the image first. Let's go through the images here that I've got from this research. Let's start with this one. All right. So what we've got here is, let me get my notes here. Matsuda is this person's name at Facebook. Got to get the person's first name. So this research from Facebook is putting a 3D display on the outside of a VR headset. And the idea is you can auto-stereoscopically show what the person's face looks like inside the VR headset to the people outside the VR headset for a very rudimentary at this point way of having the headset removed more or less in real time for the people in the same room as you. Heaney and I were laughing at this image and at this research because it is so weird looking just at first glance. And they say, I've got these quotes taken from this blog post very clearly saying this is very far from being a consumer product. This is very likely never going to be something we're going to see in a standalone form factor. But it's still the quote from Michael Abrash here. Let me see if I've got it here. Do you have that, Heaney?
I don't have it, but I think it was something along the lines of, I thought this would be a novelty at best.
Yeah, so in 2019, Matsuda gave a demo to Michael Abrash at Facebook and, quote, my first reaction that it was kind of a goofy idea, a novelty at best, but I don't tell researchers what to do because you don't get innovation without freedom to try new things. And that's a good thing because now it's clearly a unique idea with genuine promise. So
Abrash said that?
Promise. Abrash said that. Yep.
Oh man, you know what? And that's what makes him so intelligent, is to not look at it and go, just because I didn't think that it would be a big deal doesn't mean that it's not an innovation worth exploring. And I kudos to you, Mr. Abrash, for thinking that way. I mean, it's very obvious to me that those are the type of mentalities that are going to drive this technology forward. Chris Richardson in our chat said exactly what I did when I first saw this. This reminds me of RoboCop. It absolutely reminds me of RoboCop. They yank somebody's brain out and stick it in a robot, and this is what they gave us in that movie, RoboCop 2, I believe it was. Holy cow. First of all, I love this. I would jump on this in a heartbeat. This is one of the most exciting things since input controllers, since hand tracking. I love this. I want this. This would make me buy a headset immediately. This would make me choose an inferior headset if I could have. Oh, look at this. Look at this. This is amazing.
So to be clear, I've got a lot of these notes here. I'm not looking at the comments here. So Heaney or Kyle, you'll need to tell me if there's any interesting questions in the comments. I've got a bunch of notes here. I went through the research paper briefly that was done from Facebook to discuss this, and I've all.
Ian? Now, Heaney, when you build that eject button for Ian to push, it's not supposed to eject him. It's supposed to eject me.
He must have pressed your eject button. I think he was about to put on the video, which I will cast up here.
Yeah, let's do that.
He has it on his, actually. So as soon as he comes back. But, I'm actually going to be the one to disagree. I know you think this is a very interesting kind of concept. I know Abrash has kind of hinted of being surprised, but to me, something like this is an interesting novelty for a lab, but the reason it will never be in a consumer product is simply that it's a waste of money and resources to put two displays at the front, two light field displays of that, and all of the rest of the hardware required to back it up. It is very interesting. Maybe in the 2030s, we'll get some niche headset that's its kind of unique feature, but anytime soon, it's just impractical. And I think it misses the point of VR. If you need to have this on to be in the room with someone, VR is not the right device for the use case that you're using anyway. The point of VR is to be able to telecommunicate with people who could be on the other side of the planet where they can't see the front of your headset in the first place.
Yeah, I love the fact that, Heaney, you and I are going to disagree on this, but very professionally and civilly. We're going to disagree on this until we see which one of us is, and it might take until 2030, you're right. But I believe that will be a huge selling point for a lot of people going forward. Mainstream consumers, not fanboys.
So I don't know what magic words I said to get canceled out of this experience right in the middle of it, but yeah, my app crashed and now I'm back. I finally got access to multitask on Oculus Quest 2, that feature that launched sometime in June. I finally got access to it in August. So I don't know if maybe activating that experimental feature caused me a problem. But the first image we showed up there, that was a customized Rift S where they were just showing the concept. It was a 3D display mounted to the front with Matsuda's face, crudely rendered from a game engine, recreating his eye gaze using signals from a pair of eye tracking cameras inside the headset. And then they started building on it and evolving it. And I think they eventually started using a Half Dome 2 prototype with some of their later prototypes of this idea. And this image here is showing a cutaway view of one of their later prototype display pods. So you've got this outward-facing display, and then you've got an inward-facing display, combining the two of those. And I think that's what we were seeing more or less in the secondary image. I've got some more videos here, and I want to show some of these things where they're showing the various ways that these. So in this video, on the left one, you're seeing a VR headset with the external display disabled, representing the way things are kind of right now. And then in the middle one, you've got a VR headset with an outward-facing 2D display, as proposed in prior academic works. So some gaze cues are visible with that, but it's got the incorrect perspective that could limit the viewer's ability to discern the gaze direction of the person in the middle. And on the right, you've got Facebook's current prototype using 3D, and they're calling it reverse pass-through displays, showing, quote, the correct perspective for multiple external viewers. And I went over this with Heaney, kind of like arguing with him, where like I don't quite understand. Like I think it's that the external display is a really interesting idea. I would love to see someone test this with the Valve Index, with the USB port on the Valve Index, with a display attached to the front there, and then if you could use like a Vive puck on a viewer's forehead, so someone else in the room having a Vive puck attached to their forehead, and have the perspective corrected for the person with the Vive puck on their head. Because if you know the location of both the headset in VR and the person in the room, you could have a one-to-one view that would probably get you most of the way there. And of course, what Facebook is explaining with its research here, this key quote, is that they're basically suggesting that it's really important you're able to make this work for multiple viewers in the same room. That's why they're focusing on a 3D light field display that will work for multiple viewers in like an auto stereoscopic way. And I'm curious. I want to see some of this stuff. Obviously, we're not going to many live in-person events right now, but that's what SIGGRAPH is so cool for, is actually getting to see some of this stuff.
So I'm watching this video here and I'm thinking to myself, how spooky the middle image is, especially when he looks down. It's really triggering to me. That one all the way at the end makes a lot more sense to me. And obviously 3D is where it's at. I remember watching I remember seeing an image of somebody who had taken an applique and put it on their, a sticker and stuck it on there, and it's a print off of their face. And that was like, oh, that's clever. I like that. I should probably do that. But then I realized that without it being 3D, unless you're looking straight ahead at somebody, it's got a weird kind of reaction to it. So I would definitely not do that in a 2D. The 3D, I mean, this is amazing. This really scratches an itch. Now, to Heaney's point, one of the reasons why this may not be applicable to a soon to come out headset is that you're just wasting some CPU, GPU ticks that you could be better off used for performance in a game or performance here and there. Yeah. Well, and weight, obviously. So, well, yeah, and I mean, there's all these little things, that's why there are pro models of stuff, is because people are willing to spend a couple extra bucks to get a feature like this. That's just my opinion. At least make it available.
Displays are quite a lot more than a couple of extra bucks. That's the problem. To do it, you could do it with a 2D display for a couple extra bucks, but when you want to do it properly like this in 3 dimensions with a light field display, you're talking about potentially doubling the price of the product.
How much of those frames that I see everybody has nowadays, those 3D frames, I don't even remember what they're called.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. So Looking Glass. You're thinking of Looking Glass. And that's what I was joking or imagining earlier, that like they take a Looking Glass and attach that to the front of a Valve Index, and then put a Vive puck on someone else's view in the room. Actually, you wouldn't even need the Vive puck.
I don't think you need the puck for that.
But let me read from the paper here. So from this paper from Facebook Research, they said, quote, "We reviewed past research that utilizes track 2D reprojection of the eyes instead of an audio stereoscopic display. These approaches do not support multiple external viewers, but also have limited fidelity in the single-use user case due to the lack of stereoscopy. The reprojected view can be correct for one eye or the average position of the eyes, but not both eyes simultaneously." So it's still an interesting idea. I'm curious to see if we ever see it again.
If people blinked one eye at a time like that, I would never look anybody in the eye ever again. That was very disturbing to me. Well, so I guess the question is raised of will people be able to see your eyes through your VR headset someday in the future? Question mark. That's a title for your article right there, Ian. We don't know. We don't know. Wow, I'll tell you what, this has really, truly been a fantastic episode. I think we've hit on a lot of fun stuff. We've had a lot of interaction from the audience here. I'm going to go around the room here. Heaney, do you have any final words of wisdom or thoughts on any of the stuff that we've talked about today?
Yeah, I guess to argue against my point earlier about this not being something that's useful, specifically for a mixed reality headset that is trying to perform the same use cases as a see-through AR glasses style headset, this could be something that is very useful. The problem, of course, is the fact that you want to make something like that as small and compact as possible and use as little battery as possible. But you could provide something that is very compelling and goes far beyond what physically see-through displays can actually do. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens maybe in the enterprise case where the costs of something like this don't matter as much. It's just on VR itself that I get a little bit more skeptical of the value of something like this.
Ian?
Yeah, I think to Heaney's point about sort of why this is a dead end, Facebook would rather sell you two $200 headsets than one $1,000 headset. They would rather get both people in the room into a virtual reality experience with their codec avatars. And that's what I think the last video I showed with the handheld pod was showing the codec avatars, I think, through these optical pods that they were kind of demonstrating. But obviously, Facebook has these codec avatars that they're very future thinking about that really realistically create the look of an individual through more or less scanning various parts of their bodies, I think is the way it works. Maybe Heaney can correct me on that if I'm not right. But yeah, that's the underlying thing there of why this is such a dead end is it makes so much more sense from a financial perspective to try to get everyone in the room into a headset and also have the people that are 1,000 miles away in a headset and make the headset as cheap as absolutely possible to get everyone into the headset. And we know that's Facebook's overall kind of strategy here and what they're going for with even advertising in VR. They can lower the cost of games and potentially lower the cost of hardware over the long run by doing other things with the headsets, but by advertising and doing those sorts of things. It just makes sense to lower the cost of the headset rather than adding on an external display.
And sure, and at this stage of the game, maybe that is very true. If somebody had told me a couple years ago that, hey, people are going to have bendable displays on their cell phones that you can open up and there's a crease down the middle of your screen, I would have told you that you were crazy. But yet, here we are in a world where your computer or your phone screen can bend. It's always fun to watch these silly innovations. And I say silly, I don't really mean silly, but I mean unexpected innovations happen and take off and become a thing. And to Michael Abrash's point, it's an innovation that just because I didn't think it was a good idea doesn't mean that it isn't going to become mainstream. So we'll have to wait and see. And Heaney and I will, wait a couple years and we'll revisit this civil debate on whether or not that's a practical application in VR. Okay, so Ian, what do we have coming up on uploadvr.com this week? Do we have anything fun and exciting?
We have a bunch of games coming out for review. We're getting into the end of this month. We've obviously got the Quest 2 going back on sale at the end of this month. And then kind of like what I alluded to earlier in this discussion, it's going to be a nonstop kind of rush through the holiday season there with lots of new game content coming out as everyone tries to get in position to really get in front of those buyers through the holiday season. And we've got basically a few weeks here where we're trying to catch up on all the game releases that are getting started on that sort of release schedule. So we'll have reviews. We've got some streaming planned. We were still going back and forth on what we're going to try, but Warplanes just came out on Quest, and that's a really, really pretty. Heaney was the one who played it last time. Really, really pretty, beautiful World War I flight simulator game where you're doing dogfights, and I can't wait to hand drop a bomb out of that plane. Heaney, how good does that feel to hand drop a bomb out of that plane?
Well, the last time I tried it was kind of still a trigger movement. It's not really a throw yet, but hopefully they had an immersive throw in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go and check that game out. Put on my Royal Guardsman record and listen to some Snoopy music while I fly around in my Sopwith camel and fight the Red Baron. Is that all possible?
It is. It's an incredibly impressive game and perhaps the best seated game on Quest so far. In fact, for me personally, it definitely is. And what's really impressive is, a lot of people always complain about games not feeling full and not feeling finished, etc., like that in VR because of the market size. This is a full game. This really is a full finished game. In my view, it's worth the asking price, and it has a lot of content to play. So I really recommend, if you're at all into flight sims and you don't have a gaming PC setup, pick up Warplanes.
Fantastic.
Adam, I want to talk to Adam and the people talking about Facebook Connect. We are waiting on confirmation of a new Facebook Connect. That is actually, I'm really glad we brought that up because Heaney, we did not get into that. Maybe we'll get into it next week. But let me find the quote because it's actually pretty significant. Did you take notes on this one here? Yeah. Okay.
The visual
Key quote
Turing
from.
test?
Yes, visual Turing test. We're going to talk about the visual Turing test that Facebook alluded to in this blog post. And the quote is from Facebook as of today: later this year, we'll give a more holistic update on our display systems research and show how all this work, from varifocal, holographic optics, eye tracking, and distortion correction to reverse pass-through, is coming together to help us pass what we call the visual Turing test in VR. We're going to get into that next week, I think, Heaney. I think that's the way we'll go with it.
I don't know. I think an AI wrote that statement. See? What Turing test? All right, folks. Well, again, wonderful to have so many regulars and new people in our chat during this video. We really love the engagement, so keep it going. And while you're watching all of the videos on YouTube in the Upload VR channel, like, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. Leave comments. We really appreciate it. We really do. Okay, well, I think that does it, unless either one of you have any final thoughts. No, we're good. All right. Fantastic. Go to uploadvr.com. Get all your news from us. It's a wonderful place to go. Thank you all very much for watching. We'll see you in the future. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.